Entrepreneurs Over 40, Episode 12, featuring Bill and Esther VanGorder talking about their Nordic Walking business.
I think one of the things that attracted us to it was it's something we could do together. So that whether we were out teaching classes or in the house working, it was something that we could do and enjoyed, and something we were both personally interested in. I guess isn't that the secret to any kind of job, especially a job that you choose to do when you get a little bit older? That is, it's really got to be something you believe in and that you do yourself.
You're listening to Entrepreneurs Over 40, the show for somewhat mature entrepreneurs and side hustlers. And now your host, Greg Mills.
Our guests today are a couple from Halifax, Nova Scotia, Canada. He was the president and CEO of the Lung Association of Nova Scotia for 15 years before he retired, if ever so briefly. Prior to that, he was the Atlantic Area Director of the Management Resource Center for the YMCA. Since 2008, he has been involved with CARP, Canada's largest advocacy association for older Canadians, serving as vice chair on the board of directors as well as the current COO. She had a long and successful career as both an insurance underwriter and in-house financial counsel. She is currently the artistic director on the executive board of the Theatre Arts Guild, Canada's oldest continuing operating theatre company, as well as the treasurer of the Serving Seniors Alliance Cooperative. Together, they have run a psychic entertainment company called Mind Miracles for over 50 years, and most recently have started Nordic Walking, Nova Scotia. It was for this that they won the prestigious 2019 WISE 50 Over 50 Award. Without further ado, Bill and Esther VanGorder.
Hi, good to be here.
I'm glad you could be here. Bill and Esther, can you take a few moments and fill in the gaps from that intro and bring us up to speed with what's going on in your world?
What was supposed to have been kind of an in-retirement part-time gig for Bill has become a full-time gig for both of us now. Nordic Walking has become extremely popular, and even though we thought the pandemic would pretty much knock the business out of the water, it's actually done the opposite, because the one thing that people can keep on doing no matter what is getting outside and walking.
That's great. Now, Esther, I believe you coined the phrase retirement fail.
That's what she calls me.
Yeah.
You want to elaborate just a little bit on that?
Well, Bill's tried to retire 4 times now. The first time when he retired from the Lung Association, it lasted about 3 months. And then he got into doing some consulting and some public speaking. And then he decided to retire again. And then he got into the human resources business. And then Nordic Walking came along. And now he's gone back to work full-time with CARP. So it's kind of like taking home a little kitten and to look after it until it finds its forever home, but keeping it yourself. So,
of course, Esther's done no better than me. Her idea was to retire from the pesky day job and spend a little bit of her time helping me run Nordic Walking. And when I went back to work full-time as the chief operating officer for CARP, which is the same as the AARP that a lot of your listeners will know, just the Canadian version. So I'm now the senior staff officer there, and Esther is operating Nordic Walking Nova Scotia full-time. So she's a retirement fail too.
Yeah, I suppose.
So what prompted you both to come out of retirement and start Nordic Walking?
Well, I got involved in Nordic Walking. I had been a runner all my fitness life, and my knees started to bother me. And I'd heard about Nordic Walking poles and how they could help give you a full body, low impact workout that wouldn't affect your knees. So I tried it out and started to enjoy it. And then by very good fortune, Esther and I met the late Dr. Klaus Schwanbeck, who was the German former Olympic coach who actually brought Nordic Walking to North America, initially to Toronto, Canada, and to Miami, Florida, where he got groups starting. We met him. He taught us how to walk properly. We had not learned well, the technique being self-taught. And then I gave Esther a pair of poles for Christmas, and
the rest is history. Bill was a runner. I was never a runner. I was not into fitness classes or joining gyms, but I'd always been a walker. Walked dogs when I was a kid, and that was my form of keeping in shape. So when he gave me the poles, it was just perfect for me.
So Klaus then asked us if said he really wanted to get more instructors trained in Atlantic Canada. He trained us as instructors, and then we became instructor trainers under his guidance, and now we do all the instructor training for the 4 provinces in Atlantic Canada, certify those instructors. And then about 12 years ago, he asked us if we would become the distributors of the poles for Atlantic Canada, because he was located in Ontario. It was a long way away. So we became the Atlantic Canada distributors of Nordic's brand, Nordic Walking poles. And now we do that. In addition to that, Esther has grown as a very active online sales business. We sell our poles literally worldwide. We've had orders from as far away as Belgium, Israel, Hawaii,
New Zealand.
Yes, you just sent a pair of poles.
I just sent a pair of poles to New Zealand.
That's a good story.
Okay.
Yeah, the lady got in touch and back and forth by email, and we told her where she could get them in New Zealand rather than pay the shipping costs, which were almost as much as the poles themselves from Canada to New Zealand. And she decided that, no, she liked ours, mainly because they were blue. And you could replace the rubber feet. And I guess the one she could find in New Zealand, she said you couldn't replace the rubber feet. You had to buy a new pair of poles, and that sold her. So off they went.
We have found just a tremendous growing interest and understanding. We've produced a number of online videos on our website so people can look and see how to use them properly. Also allows us to explain that these are not hiking or trekking poles, Nordic walking poles. Nordic is not a brand, it's a style of pole, and our brand that we like happens to be the Nordics brand, but Nordic walking poles are a style. They have a special hand strap on them that allows you, or cradle strap, thumb hole strap, that allows you to use the poles and let go of them at the end of your swing, which means you're using the whole upper body. They also have larger feet than the typical hiking or trekking poles that just have a little round kind of nickel size rubber tip at the bottom. And of course, if you're pushing yourself along with those, you're just hitting the ground with the very smallest edge of that tip. Whereas Nordic feet are made like a little rubber foot itself, as only with the toes facing backwards, and they gain contact with the ground about 1 inch by 2 inches the entire time you're walking. And everybody knows walking is good for you. In North America, surveys show that over 70% of people say walking is their favorite activity. And Nordic walking is just a better way to walk, because not only are you using those muscles from the waist down, like you do generally when you walk, but because you're pushing the poles with every step, you're also using the 45% of muscles that are above your waist. So full body workout, low impact. You get your strength training and your aerobic training at the same time.
Okay. Now, can you describe the Nordic walking itself for our listeners?
Well, Nordic walking was originally invented in Finland by the National Cross Country Ski Team as summer training for their elite athletes. They discovered that it was such a good workout that they should share it with the rest of the population. So it's really, to simplify it, it's cross-country skiing without skis and without snow. It's just like regular walking, swinging your arms, the poles, your arm is opposite to your foot, so it's that cross gait. And when your arm comes up with the pole, it plants right beside you on the ground, and you push yourself forward with each step. And that engages all of your upper body muscles right down to the core. So if you just think about what a cross-country skier looks like, or a snowshoer, but instead it's somebody walking down the street or down a trail.
Of course, the beauty of it is walking up hills, for instance, is much easier. One of the interesting things about Nordic walking is what the researchers call the perception of exertion, how hard you think you're working, because you're spreading the work out over so many muscles, it doesn't feel like you're working as hard. So people find it easier to walk, and especially easier to get up hills. When we go downtown, for instance, to the theater and park at the parking garage, which is a few blocks below the theater, we always say on our way up that steep hill, "Oh, gee, I wish we had our poles with us today." Yeah. And I think if they let us take them into the theater when we went, we'd probably take them with us.
Yep.
You hit on a little bit about the perception of exertion. What are some of the other benefits of Nordic walking?
Well, because it involves your upper body muscles, it really improves your posture. I have better posture now than I've ever had, and it gives you that upper body strength and core strength. So it's great for falls prevention, especially in seniors. If you stand with really good posture, it's hard for somebody to knock you over. And it's also, if you do happen to start to take a tumble, you've got that strength to catch yourself and keep yourself upright. It's great for weight loss, weight control.
Burns 30% more calories than regular walking.
It's been proven to improve and help mental health. It's kind of like that runner's high that people talk about, and getting those endorphins. I find it if I'm having a crabby kind of day, that if I grab my poles and go for a nice long walk, that I feel 10 times better when I get back. When I still had the pesky day job, I used to go out and walk 45 minutes on my lunch break. And if for some reason my boss came down the hall and saw that it was my lunch break and I hadn't gone for my walk, he'd always stop at the door and say, "Aren't you going?" Because he knew I'd be crabby and tired and cranky by 3 p.m. So it's a real help with that. It's been shown to help Parkinson's patients, give them the stability. And there's something, I don't understand the science, but there's something about having that pair of poles in their hands and concentrating on a technique that really helps control the signs and the tremors of Parkinson's. High blood pressure, brings high blood pressure down, great for cardiac rehab.
Osteoporosis, at building strength in the bones. We work cooperatively with the Arthritis Society as well as Alzheimer's Society, because all of those organizations want their patients, their members to walk more. And by the way, I think point out all these things that Esther's been talking about, this is based on science. It isn't fitness fad of the day. There is reams of research, most of it European, because that's where Nordic walking has been longer than in Canada. But there's lots of research. In fact, if you go to our Nordic Walking Nova Scotia website, you'll find a list of over 70 research papers on all the areas that she's mentioned and the sources where you can go and look at them. So when we quote any of the statistics like burning 30% more calories, that's based on research. That particular research was done in the States by the Cooper Institute and then repeated by the Mayo Clinic. So it's that kind of quality research.
Yeah, I hate to say it. Unfortunately, most of America has become the control group for the research. So which one of y'all came up with the idea to focus on this? And did you both buy in, or did one of you have any misgivings about it? Or?
I think Bill probably was the instigator.
Although Esther's the one with the retail background. She grew up in a 3-generation retail clothing store family, so I don't think I can take a lot of the credit.
I think we got into it equally. At the time, I was still working full-time, so it was more Bill's company, like, to do the day-to-day than it was mine, and I kind of did the bookkeeping and all that kind of admin in the background and taught on the weekends.
And now that's completely reversed, because I part-time still do the marketing and the online digital work, and Esther does all the day-to-day work. So I think one of the things that attracted us to it was it's something we could do together, so that whether we were out teaching classes or in the house working, it was something that we could do and enjoyed, and something we were both personally interested in. I guess, isn't that the secret to any kind of job, especially a job that you choose to do when you get a little bit older. It's really got to be something you believe in and that you do yourself. Both of us, we walk almost every day, 5 or 6 days a week, first thing in the morning. Esther, of course, being the young one of the team, I go out for about 45 minutes to an hour. She goes out an hour to an hour and a half every day. So we practice what we preach.
Yeah, y'all are both in great shape. I'm 30 years younger than you, sir, and you are in better shape than I am right now.
Well, I can tell you, because...
I'm editing that part out of the podcast.
Yeah. I was a runner and ran marathons 40 years ago. I'm actually in better total shape now than I was then. I had great cardio and great leg strength in those days, but I was a one-speed runner. My marathons were around 3:40, which for anybody who knows those, that's really middle of the pack kind of running. And now, because of the upper body work that I'm getting and the more regular steps that I'm putting in every week, overall, I'm in better shape now than I was when I was your age.
Okay.
So there's still time for you.
Yes, there is. We're gonna make it a better time.
Good.
Personally,
it gets better as you go on. Believe me.
Yeah.
It does.
So.
Yeah, I never had upper body strength. I mean, I walked a lot, but couldn't lift things, couldn't carry things, and now we argue over who brings the big boxes of poles in from the car when they come from the post office. I'm just showing off for the neighbors, really.
That's right.
What all does Nordic Walking Nova Scotia encompass as far as your business model?
We sell the poles directly. We also sell them through sub-distributors and instructors. We also have retail outlets that we supply the poles to around Atlantic Canada. As you know, we're talking the 4 provinces, and we've got people working in their own little Nordic businesses right across all 4 Atlantic provinces. Esther does the online sales too. And we teach classes, and we teach other people to teach classes, because there is a technique. It's a simple technique, but there is a technique so that you're really engaging all those upper body muscles in the safest way and the most effective way possible.
Yep. Before the pandemic, we were traveling a fair amount around Nova Scotia and the other maritime provinces and teaching classes of up to 30 people at a time how to do the proper technique. It takes about an hour and a half. And by the time we leave, most people have picked it up. It's not a hard technique. Pretty much if you can walk, you can Nordic walk. But hopefully we'll get back to that again in the late summer or the fall, depending on how things go where we are.
So you touched on the pandemic a little bit, how you expected it to impact your business, but how has it actually?
We've had the best 12 months that we've had in 12 years. Like I said before, because we know that our going out and teaching and talking to people face to face was really what drove a lot of sales. We figured once we weren't allowed to do that we were dead in the water until it was over. But what happened is that people still wanted to get out and exercise, and the gyms were closed and the group activities weren't happening, so they could get out and walk. Nordic Walking just gave them that extra workout. It's become very popular with seniors. Even when things started to open up between the lockdowns, a lot of the older demographic were afraid to go back to the gym because that's where a lot of transmission was happening. They weren't confident about it, so they wanted to be able to go out with maybe one friend, one relative, or on their own. And so that's driven the online sales. Christmas last year was pretty much insane.
Yeah, I think the other thing that was maybe more good luck than good management, but I think we saw the potential coming, was that we were ready for the digital world. We were ready. We have an excellent website, and the person who manages the website for us does an amazing job. We were familiar and knew how to produce our own videos and do our own instruction. I'd spent my career in not-for-profits. I'm a certified fundraising director, and although I don't do fundraising anymore, thank goodness, because that's tougher all the time, I do know about that kind of sales, and I was surprised, and I think it's one of the reasons that I've enjoyed the business part so much. I never realized how close marketing in terms of fundraising was to marketing in terms of actual sales. The difference is when we're successful, when it's your own business, you actually get to reap the rewards, whereas you're doing fundraising, somebody else is getting the eventual rewards of your work. Of course, wonderful thing to be doing, but that immediate response. And one of the things I find about a lot of people getting into this kind of business is if they've been in a field like not-for-profit or perhaps government, something like that, where they didn't personally get the feedback or the response if they did or good or bad. They just tried to do their job to keep their boss happy. When you're running your own business, if you do something right, you get the reward. If you don't, you know it right away. And there's no excuses and no hiding from it. And we like that kind of immediate reaction and response. I'm not sure everybody does, but I think that's what's driven us in a lot of ways.
It's good to have that feedback immediately.
Yeah.
So, and, Esther, just it's Bill's fault.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I grew up in retail, and I would never want to have a brick and mortar store because I saw the hours and the stress that it gave to my parents over the years. But doing it this way, and it's something that you can see the difference in people. When they've been Nordic Walking,
Tell them about the lady you talked to last week.
She came to one of our classes years ago and bought poles. She was, I think she could call her morbidly obese. She was extremely overweight. That caused all kinds of other health problems, as it does. I think she'd finally had both knees replaced and maybe a hip. She called and said before she started with poles, she couldn't walk down her driveway to get the mail from the mailbox without being completely winded and overwhelmed. And now that she was using the poles, she was going out for walks for 45 minutes to an hour almost every day. She lost a lot of weight, I think over 100 pounds, and she felt fabulous. And her closing comment was, "Thank you for giving me my life back."
Well,
Yeah. So when you get a customer say something like that to you, that makes it worthwhile.
Yeah.
It's a lot different than two little girls in matching dresses walking down the church aisle on Sunday morning that blended together well.
Okay.
One of the nice things about our brand of poles, they actually come with a 2-year guarantee, and all the other name brand poles only have a 1-year guarantee. I don't know why, but they do. It's very seldom we get any comments or get them back. And they are really simple. They do expand. You have to set them to the right height for your size, but there's really nothing to go wrong with them. If a person has a problem, usually I can fix it. If I can't fix it, we just replace the pole, and that happens maybe 1% of the time.
Now, when y'all are operating, full scale pre-pandemic and hopefully post-pandemic, is this a seasonal business or do you go year round through the winter time?
No.
The business goes year round. We kind of concentrate our group classes in the spring and the fall, because starting in about mid-April or so, the weather starts to clear up so people can get outside, and they're looking to get things going for the spring. Over the summer, it's harder to get people out. It's hot, and they're vacationing with their family, and kids are out of school. Then in the fall, once you hit September, it's full speed ahead till the end of the year,
and Christmas is amazing.
It's hard to know what to get a parent or a grandparent, because they've got everything they need. But giving them a pair of poles is some cases giving them their freedom back, and giving them some health benefits. And a lot of moms and grandmoms don't want to use a cane because a cane means you're old. But if you give them a pair of Nordic Walking poles, they're cool.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
So they'll use them even if they think, well, I don't need anything to help me walk, but they're kind of cool around all their friends. So
Yeah.
Okay. So what ages do y'all serve or target? What is the general range?
it's women from about 35 to 55 is kind of the largest demographic right now, but it's also very popular with seniors because it's keeping them mobile and active. But we also have about a dozen schools just in Nova Scotia that have classroom sets for the elementary schools because kids can do it too. If the kids start to get rangy in the classroom, they don't need to book the gym. They don't need to get the phys ed teacher. The teacher just gets them all outside, gives them a pair of poles, and they walk around school a few times. You don't need any special equipment beyond the poles. And what we've heard is that it's one of the few things that a lot of teenage girls will do because they don't want to get hot and sweaty. They don't want to mess up their hair or wreck their nails. But this is just, an excuse to go out and walk and chat with their friends. The other great thing with school-age kids is there's always those kids, and I was one of them, I admit it, in school, that they're the last ones picked for the basketball team or the volleyball team, and they're not really into team sports, and they can't do it very well, but they can do this just as well as anybody else can. So the kid with special needs or the slightly chubby child who can't run and feels left behind can walk and keep up with everybody else just the same as the cool kids.
Now, was that something that y'all were instrumental in getting into the schools?
Well, we were, and we were very fortunate when we first got started in this. One of our very good friends was still teaching school, and Jamie and his wife became Nordic instructors. So I had Jamie, because I don't have as much patience with kids as he does. I had Jamie to take with me, who had been teaching grade 6 and 7 for eons, who knew how to handle these children. Then a friend of his was a school principal who also became and still is one of our instructors and looks after the northern part of the province. With their kind of connections and expertise, the school business really did increase. It's tough. As anybody may know who's tried to deal with schools and school boards, nobody's quite sure where the decision-making is. Is it the teachers? Is it the principal? Is it the school board? Is it the city council? It's a very difficult system to try to manage. So having an insider in there is what it takes. The other thing that we were lucky to stumble on, and I'm not quite sure how it happened, but libraries in Atlantic Canada and recreation organizations, especially on Prince Edward Island, have taken to buying sets of poles, 10, a dozen, 20 or more, and they loan them out like library books. You bring your card, you pay to take them out for 2 weeks and use them, which is wonderful for us because it is an opportunity for people who want to try them. And then if they want their own, then we're happy to look after them. But it also means people who aren't able to afford the poles, even though they are very inexpensive, can't afford them right now, are able to access them or borrow them through those groups. A basic set of poles for the whole set, for everything you need, the straps, the feet, even a bag to carry them in, is about $60 US. All the else you need is a pair of good walking shoes and a jacket or not, according to the weather. So it's a really inexpensive investment to get into as a fitness activity. What else can you do for a one-time payment of $60? But there are even people who can't afford that, and they can borrow them from their local library.
Yeah, and they can get a feel for how it works and see if that's something that they want to invest in.
Exactly.
There are walking groups around. Some of them work out of the libraries, or a lot of the trails associations that maintain the walking trails have groups that go, and they're excellent for new Canadians who are looking to meet people and get involved in things and improve their English. That doesn't cost them anything. They can go to the library, get the poles, and go for a walk with some really friendly people. Walkers tend to be a fairly friendly group. It's very social. People love to chat. It hardly seems like you're working out. So there's all kinds of benefits to doing it that way.
So going back to a previous question, with your business, y'all don't charge for the actual instruction unless you're getting a certification, or is that incorrect?
It depends on the situation. There are free classes that are often offered through organizations who do all the setup and all the organizing and supply the space and everything else. We do find that for the classes that we offer, we have more success if we charge a minimum amount, $5 or $10 for a class. And if they happen to buy poles after the class, then they can take that amount off of that. There are free classes available through the various recreation associations and that sort of thing. In terms of the business, we find people are more likely to put their own investment into the whole thing if they pay a little bit toward the class. And of course, we'd never turn anybody away because they can't afford the fee. We've done classes with food banks and support groups, like for all the charities. We're flexible, and we find that's what works best for us.
Where do y'all walk? And do you have to get any kind of permits? And how big are your groups generally before they become unmanageable?
When we do a class, we figure we can each manage about 12 people on our own. If we're teaching, if we're just hosting a walk where we're just getting people out and moving and maybe giving a few tips, we've had as many as 25 show up. And generally, I'll take the people who are a little bit more fit and want to go faster, and Bill hangs back with the slower moving folks.
The old guy stays with the slow people.
There you go. Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Of course, we have to, anything we start up to do this summer, we'll have to follow the public health guidelines, which would keep us to 10. Mm-hmm. In normal times, whatever they are, we usually cap a class off if it's just the two of us at about 24, so that we can each take a dozen.
Okay.
Yep.
That makes sense. So you'll just walk around Halifax?
It depends. If we're doing a class, then we need to walk out of a location that also has an indoor space where we're able to do the kind of the pre-class, the explanation. People can sit down rather than standing for an hour and a half, but it needs an outside space where we can take them for 45 minutes, half an hour to 45 minutes for their actual walking training. So that could be a park, it could be a parking lot, it can be streets, depending on. We have done classes in schools, in churches, in funeral homes. They have nice auditoriums, and they're happy to have people come in and use their facility and see that they're not as scary as people might think they are. So we've done them in fitness centers and recreation centers, of course. And in that case, so we sometimes walk on the street, sometimes in a park or a parking lot, sometimes on the trails when we've done classes over at the local teachers union building, and they back right on one of the lovely trails that goes all along the shoreline down the south shore of Nova Scotia, and we're able to use that trail with them. One of the things we try to do with our walking groups is every time we organize a group walk, just people coming together to walk with their poles, we try to pick a new and different one so people get to realize how many really great places there are to walk. And that's what our instructors do, the same thing all over at Atlantic Canada. In fact, our fellow distributors instructors in other parts of Canada do the same thing, is try to open people's eyes to the beautiful opportunities we have to walk outside and enjoy the outdoors.
That amazes me that you'd have to open people's eyes, because we took a week-long trip to Nova Scotia, and it was just an incredibly beautiful place.
Yeah, well, it is. We're very lucky.
It is. Unfortunately, sometimes sort of, the prophet in his own country, people don't realize how good they have it and how nice it is, because they're just so used to it.
Because we haven't been able to travel and borders have been closed, that people are really learning more about their home province and their home area, and just learning what they can do without having to get on a plane or drive a car halfway across the country, that we have that right here.
Yeah.
You talked a little bit about it before, but the overall division of labor, let's go back to that. as it currently stands?
As it currently stands, I'm kind of the front-facing one, I guess. I do all the phone calls and the sales over the phone and the internet sales. Bill's more in the background now. He's the social media marketing expert. I don't know a whole lot about that, but he does most of the marketing. I've been out now, for example, we just put our poles into a physiotherapy clinic here in Halifax, so I'll be going out and in-servicing their staff in a couple of weeks, so that, they're physios, so they know all about the benefits, but just teaching them about the poles themselves. So what would you say, 75-25 now?
I think so.
Yeah, it used to be the other way around.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
When we teach a class, it's pretty much 50-50. We've got a script kind of in our heads that we try to stick to, but we have a plan, and Bill does part of it and I do part of it, and we throw it back and forth.
Now, do y'all have any employees?
Nope.
No, unless you count our instructors and the other distributors and retails who are all working in the business, but
they're all independent.
They're independent. What we do is give them a lot of support, suggestions, encouragement, help them with their marketing, and make sure they have all the information they need to do the job they need to do to keep their own little business going.
Okay.
And I don't think you can count the cats. No, we work for them.
Yeah,
no.
Yeah.
I saw a sign out walking earlier, beware the dog, and the cat is shady too.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, my favorite, of course, is dogs have masters, cats have staff, and we're very much the cat staff.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now that I'm working full time for CARP, of course, it's a matter of time. I feel guilty a lot of the time that Esther is having to handle as much as it is, but I'm enjoying my work with CARP, and we'll continue it for the foreseeable future, and we'll see how it goes.
Okay. That sounds like you're enjoying it too, Esther.
I am, yeah. I joke about not being a people person, but I actually do enjoy talking to most of the people who call up, and it's not like they're calling to complain about anything. They're calling for help, and I know I can give it to them. So it's quite gratifying and people have become, especially the last 15 months, have become very conscious of supporting local. So when they call and find out, they don't know where we are necessarily, but find out that we are right here in Halifax in Nova Scotia, and they can even drive by and pop their trunk, and I'll put the poles in. It's like, it's that simple, and it's like dealing with your neighbor. So it's, get to meet a lot of interesting people.
Yeah.
I bet you do. How are you sourcing your poles?
We get our poles from Nordics Canada, which is run by Greg Bellamy in Ontario, and he has them manufactured under the German specifications. Greg has continued the company, and they were originally designed under the German specifications with the same kind of oversight that the Canadian Standards Association would have, where they have the same German certification. So they're a very high quality pole. Fortunately for us, because they're not a name brand, they're, all the cross country ski people make genuine Nordic style poles too, but they literally cost more than twice as much. One pair of poles that we have that we sell for $79.95. The similar pair of the brand name in the stores is $170 a pair. In fact, that was a year ago. I wouldn't be surprised to see it's probably gone up a little bit. So we're really fortunate that we've got that source of them, and there has not been any problem with delivery. I think one of the things that we've learned, and I talk to a lot of other people in different business, is that on-time ordering has kind of gone by the boards with the pandemic, and people are learning once again to stock up ahead and have stock so that you're not waiting for the next delivery. And Greg is doing that nationally. We do it here. Our warehouse is our basement. We keep a stock ahead so that we're able to fulfill all the orders they come in, even when there are extra. I mean, this week, Esther had one order for 20 45 sets 45 sets of poles, another order for 12 sets of poles, and another one for almost as many, and that was just this week. So you've got to make sure that you've got the stock there to do it, and that means carrying some stock and ordering ahead of time. It'll be interesting to see what happens in the what I call the similar facsimile. I don't think it'll be back to the same as old. I can't, not going to be normal. So I call it, when we get to the reasonable facsimile of where we were 2 years ago, I think people are going to be a little bit more careful about how they order stock ahead and how they are, because in our kind of business, if you don't have the stock available, likely you'll lose the sale. When people want something like that, if they decide to get fit, they want to start this weekend. They don't want to wait for a month for you to get stock in. Yeah,
I can imagine if you have to wait for a month, that impulse may fade.
Yes, yeah. Exactly.
That's right.
Yeah.
It is that kind, and it's also people often, especially the age group we're dealing with, are very careful. So they do a lot of research. They figure out what they need, but then when they're finally ready to order, they don't want us to take the same amount of time they took researching us.
Yeah.
So what have been some of the crazier things that you've experienced within this company?
I think one interesting thing that I can think of, well, Esther thinks of another, is when we first started this business over a dozen years ago, when we used to go out and walk ourselves, people would say, where are your skis? Or
there's no snow.
There's no snow, things like that. And that has totally changed now. People recognize Nordic Walking. They're beginning to know what it is. Now, if we get stopped, as we often do, it's questions about where I get the poles. How do you do it? How do you like it? That kind of thing. And it's been pretty amazing to see in this part of Canada, which amounts to about a third of the country, we've been able to be involved in having an impact. And we've really been the only people do it. So I'm not breaking my arm to pat us on the back to say we can take a fair amount of responsibility for the fact that Nordic Walking is now well known in Atlantic Canada, and that's pretty gratifying.
I had a call from Belgium about back before Christmas, but it was a Nova Scotian living in Belgium who wanted me to send them to her mother in Halifax.
Okay.
So I have learned not to screen phone calls when the business line rings. You see some kind of weird number on your phone and think, oh, well, that's a scam, and don't answer it. It could be somebody from an international number who is truly inquiring about Nordic Walking poles, because with the work Bill's done with the online marketing, if you Google Nordic Walking, we're on the first page. That's why we get calls from across the country and across North America.
Yeah, I can attest to that. Researching you both was pretty easy.
Oh.
Yeah.
There you are. I should be happy with that or not.
And all of a sudden it got creepy.
Yeah.
True.
What's been the most difficult part of the business for each of you?
For me, it's keeping up with technology. I've always been fairly technically savvy, but I have had to learn to do things that I never thought, in my 70s that I'd be thinking about learning. I can manage all the apps and online, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all those things we use, and we use them from a marketing point of view, not a personal communication with friends point of view. I've learned how to make and edit our own videos. I have a little radio studio that I put up here in the corner with sound editing around it when because I do online radio commercials from here. So learning how to do all those things has been a challenge. And although I enjoy learning, I find that whole area changes all the time, as I'm sure you're finding. So you can never rest and think that you know it all or have all the information.
For me, it was, not so much now, but when we first started, I'm very much a background person. So any work that we do in theater, I'm behind the scenes. I'm not out there on stage with being an actor. And so just being able to get up in front of a group of people and teach, because I'm not a trained teacher. I've trained people before, but generally, like in a work situation, when you have somebody sitting beside you at the desk and you say, well, you look this up here and you push that button or whatever, but I'm used to it now. But I think it probably took about a year till I was completely comfortable in handling the questions and being able to deflect anyone who had a counter opinion.
So do you feel like the market is saturated yet, or is there room for other people to enter the Nordic Walking space?
Oh, I think so.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, we cover Atlantic Canada, but it's a big area. And because it's such a personal thing, it's not possible for us to get everywhere and travel everywhere, even when there is no pandemic. Like, we were still having trouble getting to all the places where people wanted us to get to. So yeah, there's lots of room in all kinds of places for people.
And there's room across the country and across North America too, for sure. Nordic Walking is catching on in other parts of Canada, but not everywhere. There's still large chunks that are unserviced. And in the States, there's a few areas, California, Florida, a little bit upper New York State, a fair amount of Nordic Walking going on, but a lot of the country has not discovered it yet. One of the things that's easy about getting people interested in Nordic Walking is when they try it, when they see it, and when they understand the very basic business of when you walk with Nordic poles, you're using those upper body muscles, and so you're getting twice the benefits because all the good stuff happens in the big muscles. Once they get that idea, then they understand and they pick it up right away. So I'm sure it's going to continue to grow. One of the interesting things is often when we do classes, we have a couple will come, and obviously the guy is there because he drove his wife and she wanted to come. So he's sitting there and he's kind of sitting there with his arms crossed and he's just not going to be interested at all. And as they hear our very simple introduction about what it's all about, then all of a sudden he's kind of relaxing like this and then looking and taking it in. And by the end of the class, and I'm not exaggerating, invariably the two of them will come up and she'll say, oh, I'm thinking I might get a set of poles. And he's saying, oh yeah, you should. And I'll get some too. And he's totally turned around and she's being the one that's a little bit hesitant. And it's because they understand, and it's so simple. As we say we're doing the class, it's hard to understand why it's taken 30 years for this to get to North America and begin to grow. It's huge in Europe. 20% of the population in Northern European and Scandinavian countries walk regularly with Nordic-style poles. In fact, we've been over there. If you're walking on a trail and you don't have Nordic poles, somebody will stop you and say, who stole your poles? Because that's the way people walk. It's not the same here yet in North America, but it'll change. People will understand what a great opportunity at all. Because as I said in the beginning, 70% of the people and more in surveys say that walking is their favorite form of exercise. So Nordic Walking is just a better way to walk.
So what will one do if they wanted to start a Nordic Walking fitness company in their city? Do y'all offer any franchising?
Yeah, we could arrange that. We would work with them and work with Greg, who has Nordics Canada, and get them set up and get them going. And it's not an expensive investment for people who want to get into it. In fact, the investment that a person makes is covered by the retail income from the poles that they originally get. So there's no upfront or annual fees. Once you're involved in doing it and you're properly trained to do it, then you buy the poles at wholesale and sell them at retail, and that's where your points are in it. So yes, we'd be happy to talk to anyone who's interested in pursuing it further.
Yeah, we'll get you in the show notes. What other plans do y'all have for Nordic Walking Nova Scotia? Any other merchandising opportunities or expanded locations?
We've got instructors, and we'd love to have some more in some of the other parts of Atlantic Canada to be available to teach people and to sell the poles. We'll stick with our one thing that we do really well. I don't think we're going to suddenly go off into some other fitness equipment.
The opportunity for us, and we can be more productive and help more people if we have more instructors and retailers out there doing the direct work with the clients, with the customers in their local community. So for us, our expansion will be by getting more people involved in their own. People like to deal local. No matter where you always want to deal local. They like to deal with somebody who's in their community, in their province, and the more people we can have doing that anywhere in North America, the better it'll be for us, and our business will grow too.
Okay. I think I know the answer to this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Do y'all have any plans to slow down?
No.
No, if he ever slows down, he'll just stop. And I think we're both pretty high energy and have to be doing. And so.
Yeah, I have there's no joy for me in the thought of sitting in my rocking chair looking out the front window. Yeah. So I'll always be doing something. And who knows, maybe there'd be a fifth retirement fail. I don't know what that might be next.
Let's get ready to wrap this up. So what's the number one piece of advice that you can give for our listeners?
The number one piece of advice, I think, is especially for older people who are at that, what we used to call retirement age, but nobody can afford to retire anymore. It is an age that Bismarck set at one time for nefarious reasons back in a time when people didn't live much beyond 65. So he set 65 as the date to get rid of some of his generals and have them retire. But when you reach that age, it's not the end. In North America, we're living a year longer in every decade. So, our life expectancy is much longer than it was. You don't want to be sitting around doing nothing. So figure out what you love and do it. And don't be afraid of making that a business. It doesn't have to be business. It can be volunteering. It can be all kinds of things. But there is real satisfaction in running your own business. And frankly, in these days of inflation and concern about whether or not we'll outlive our money, it is good to know that you've got a source of some income coming in right now, no matter how old you are. There are lots of organizations who are there to support you and help you learn the new things you have to do to run your own business.
So what's the best way for people to check you out and get in touch with you?
Probably the easiest way is to go to our website, which is www.nordicwalkingnovascotia, all written out, .ca. You'll find all our other contact information there. There's an email contact form. If you send something in, you'll usually get an answer back in 24 to 48 hours. And we're happy to talk about Nordic Walking. Most of my phone calls are 20 to 30 minutes, I find, because people just want to talk about it. So check out the web, and people who aren't comfortable with the internet can pick up the phone and give us a call at area code 902-454-2267.
All right. Well, that's a wrap. Thank you, Bill and Esther, for being guests on Entrepreneurs Over 40.
Our pleasure, Greg. Great to meet you.
Thanks, Greg.
Great. Thank you. Bill and Esther were a great couple to talk to, and they had a lot of great insight regarding business. I still can't believe that they've created a business centered around teaching people how to walk. If they are retirement fails, we should all be so lucky. One thing I learned from Bill and Esther is that it's never too late to follow your passion, whether it's starting a new business or getting in shape. Speaking of getting in shape, Nordic Walking seems like the way to go, with benefits like burning up to 30% more calories than regular walking. It increases heart and cardiovascular training up to 25%, helps with posture, and the perception of exertion is 50% of what it would be normally because of the poles. Bill shared that he is in better total shape now than when he was in his 40s. Bill said the three criteria for choosing a business to run in retirement were it should be something you can do, something you enjoy, and something that you are personally interested in. He said that is the secret to any job, really, especially one you do when you're older. Nordic Walking just happened to cross off all three for Bill and Esther. Now, because the VanGorders already had invested in their digital presence, they were prepared when the pandemic hit and actually thrived. They weren't trying to play catch up and start up their website, start using social media, or learn how to do online sales and marketing. Now, none of this came naturally to them, but they just buckled down and figured it out. Ultimately, everything's figure-outable. Both Bill and Esther get a lot of satisfaction from the knowledge that their business was helping to make people healthier and give their customers a better quality of life. The VanGorders have even managed to get Nordic Walking into schools. Bill did point out that one of his good friends, a fellow instructor, and most importantly, a school principal, helped them navigate the unique educational landscape. When attempting to sell to schools or really any governmental entity, it's good to have a guide that can help you to navigate the pitfalls. Bill pointed out that they don't always charge for classes, but that people are more likely to become invested into the process, so to speak, if they pay a little towards the class. It's kind of a paradox that people don't respect free, even if it is of the same quality. As Bill and Esther had pointed out, the pandemic had really played havoc with the supply chains. Now, to combat that issue, they've taken to carrying more stock than they normally would. Because their business is subject to a customer's desire, they'd better have the poles in stock so they don't miss out on a sale just because the customer lost their motivation while waiting for the poles to come in. The VanGorders don't feel like the market is saturated yet in North America, particularly the U.S. People like to deal locally no matter where they are. Both of them said that they would be more than happy to discuss any business opportunities as they saw fit for someone interested in bringing the Nordic Walking model to their area. Now, this sounds like an excellent opportunity, and I encourage anyone that might be interested to reach out and take that next step and contact Bill and Esther. Their number one piece of advice was, figure out what you love and go do it. It doesn't have to be running a business. It could be volunteering. They have found real satisfaction in running their own business. It is good to know that they have another source of income coming in too. Now, next week we'll have on Joe Applebaum talking about his high energy series in LinkedIn marketing. So be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss that or any of the other episodes.
Thank you for listening to Entrepreneurs Over 40. Check us out at entrepreneursover40.com. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or your favorite podcast directory.